Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. Another round of storms threatening the region this Friday night.
This could be on the way. The forecast playing out a rerun of yesterday's thunder, lightning, hail, and even a potential tornado touchdown.
Well, the storms brought a tornado and flash floods to several regions of Montana. Another weather phenomenon left its mark in Sydney.
And take a look here. This photo is from hole 5 of the golf course at the Sydney Country Club. We're told this almost tree root-like pattern is the result of a lightning strike.
The course superintendent tells us the impact did blow several electrical components in sprinklers. Now, the club is also using this incident to explain why golfers are not allowed on the course during a lightning storm.
Near Great Falls, the storm snapped tree limbs, damaged crops, caused flooding there. Experts
say weather warnings can only be issued by using radar, so hazards such as large hail and high winds must be confirmed on the ground reports during or after a storm.
So to check how they're doing, a team of National Weather Service meteorologists has been deployed to assess damage in the areas hit the hardest.
The insurance companies are going to look if there's claims to see if there was hail or wind or tornado damage. Of course, research and the folks issuing the warnings, we'd like to know how we're doing.
Busy in the Weather Center tonight. Here in Billings, Q2's Ed McIntosh is in for Bob McGuire, monitoring the weather headed into our region.
Yeah, we can take a look at where we were last evening. By the time we got done, check out all of the storm reports. We're talking about storm reports that are being checked out today. It includes everything from heavy rain, that tornado around Judith Gap, fortunately out in a very rural area, a lot of lightning strikes, tree damage, and so much more. So there's where the storms were last evening. Here's where we are this evening. Everything shaded into yellow is a tornado watch until midnight tonight. Now that means the conditions are right for strong to severe storms, including tornadoes, to start to develop. There's no immediate threat right now, but it's an excellent time to start to make sure you know where everybody is, start getting things together, and stay informed about what's going on with those storms. We're going to be tracking those and let you know what's happening for the rest of the weekend with the forecast in a few minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Ed.
For the first time, an invasive species of Asian clam has turned up in Montana, and it was found here in Yellowstone County at Lake Elmo.
Well, that has Fish, Wildlife and Parks concerned. Q2's David J. joins us now live from Lake Elmo with details on that concern. David.
Well, Jeanelle, Russ, we're out here at the Lake Elmo State Park boat ramp, and what they found so far are shells of the Asian clam, not actual live clams. These shells are about the size of a quarter, and the concern is that the clam has no predators, and it may take up some of the food of some of the natural species. Fish, Wildlife and Parks is telling people that and reminding them to clean, drain, and dry their boats as a way to help. The idea is that this most likely came from the Columbia River in Oregon, where the Asian clam was found first in 1938 and possibly came here on a boat or with some fishing gear. There's a lot at this point that FWP does not know, and it will do an investigation after determining exactly what species this is.
The investigation by the biologists now is to determine how those shells got here, if there are invasive Asian clams in the lake, how they got here, and have they spread from here into the waters surrounding here. This lake feeds a little irrigation system, and so it wouldn't stretch your imagination to think that those things could get down into the laterals and on down into the irrigation system.
And at the boat ramp, they have this sign here. It's a mussel alert, and they do remind people to clean, drain, and dry their boats as they come out of the lake and leave the area. Bob Gibson says that investigation, as they mentioned, will look into some of the irrigation ditches both up and downstream of the Lake Elmo. And once again, the big concern is that it may take up some of the food from the native species. Jeanelle, Russ, back to you.
All right, Q2's David J. live at Lake Elmo tonight. Thank you.
23-year-old Billings man injured after crashing into a ditch near Pauley Elementary School.
Now, that crash happened just before 4 o'clock this afternoon in the 2300 block of Wingate Lane. Billings police say the man was transported to a Billings hospital with injuries. It's not clear how seriously he was injured.
A crash is still under investigation.
Montana County election officials now expressing concern over Montana Secretary of State Corey Stapleton's plan to implement a new computer system in time for the 2020 elections.
In a letter to the Secretary of State's office, the Montana Clerk and Recorders Association said it has grave concerns with the timeline of the implementation of the new voter system. The association says elections officials across Montana need time to test the system and train staff outside of a presidential election cycle. Stapleton says he wants to take action after what he calls some really bad situations in the IT office in 2016.
Now, we reached out to Yellowstone County Elections Administrator Brett Rutherford to get his take. He tells us he too is concerned with the timeline. Rutherford says using an untested software for the biggest election he will probably ever be a part of is scary.
Well, next year is shaping up to be a huge political year in Montana, with open seats for governor, U.S. House, Attorney General, State Auditor, and Secretary of State. And there's also an open position in the Montana Supreme Court. MTN's chief political reporter Mike Dennison tells us about who's considering or already running for this important seat in 2020.
4 weeks ago, Montana Supreme Court Justice Lori McKinnon announced she is not running for re-election next year, creating an open seat on the 7-member court. Helena lawyer Mike Black is already in the race. Black told MTN News on Friday that his broad background in many areas of the law make him a good fit for the High Court.
The citizens of Montana should expect and deserve a Supreme Court justice with enough experience to grasp the law and then know how to apply it, and apply it in a way that respects the Montana Constitution, protects people's rights, respects their dignity.
Black has worked in private practice for law firms big and small and as a solo practitioner. He also served as an assistant attorney general, helping defend Montana election and campaign laws, among other things, and as litigation director for the Montana Legal Services Association, which helps low-income Montanans on civil cases. Another attorney from Helena also is eyeing the race, State District Judge Mike McMahon, who's been a judge in the 1st District since 2017. McMahon told MTN News he'll decide by next week whether he's running. The current High Court is relatively split among judges that lean right or left politically, and McKinnon had the support of conservatives when she ran for her seat in 2012. But Black says he doesn't believe the court has a reliably political makeup one way or the other, and that it should stay that way.
I think it's important for us to be diligent in preventing partisan politics from creeping into the Montana Supreme Court or any other court for that matter, because it really has no place there.
Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Supreme Court candidates in Montana are nonpartisan, meaning they run without a political party affiliation.
Well, the state of Montana decided in 2015 that students attending private religious schools cannot benefit from a new state tax credit. Now, the state will defend that decision before the U.S. Supreme Court. The nation's High Court announced today it will take this case. In 2015, the State Revenue Department issued a rule that said a $150 tax credit could not aid Montana students who attend private religious schools. A state constitutional provision forbids state funding from going to religious organizations. 3 parents of children attending a Christian school in Kalispell challenged that rule. The Montana Supreme Court upheld the rule late last year, but now the U.S. Supreme Court will decide whether that decision violates the U.S. Constitution.
A Denver man responsible for trafficking meth into Billings won't see life outside of prison until he's in his 60s. 42-year-old Nathan Trujillo will spend nearly 21 years behind bars for his role in trafficking meth with intention to distribute it. Trujillo was living in Billings under a stolen identity. He'd bring back pounds of drugs from Denver for redistribution. During a search, investigators found nearly 3,500 doses of meth inside his vehicle. And a 30-year-old Billings woman will spend the next 4 years in prison after she admitted to selling meth. Ashley Chesmore sold a pound of meth to an undercover agent last year worth about $4,500. Chesmore received meth in the mail from a co-conspirator, with some coming from a city in California that sits directly north of the Mexico border.
Well, just yesterday, we showed you a doe near Miles City with rare triplets, including an albino fawn. And now we're seeing a report of an albino mule deer right here in Billings. This one spotted on the far west end, taking in the warm weather. We talked with Fish, Wildlife and Parks Bob Gibson, who says he thinks this deer is only a few months old. And with all wildlife, if you spot it, leave it alone. It's a baby, and chances are mom left it there for safekeeping and will be back soon.
Well, if you're looking for more statewide news, check out tonight's 9 o'clock broadcast on the CW.
I'm Jay Cohn. An icon of the Helena skyline was slated to be torn down and rebuilt following a 2016 fire. But now that project's been on hold for more than a year. Tonight on the CW News at 9 o'clock, we'll tell you why.
But first on your Q2 530 news, if you're looking to get away from the traffic, maybe the national parks aren't the best option. We'll check out the Jam in Glacier.
And later in sports, Cowboy Christmas is here. We catch up with one Montanan who might be busier than them all.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.